welcome to the Studio Meala podcast. Joining me and Sean
Yeah, that's me as well, yeah.
today on the podcast is Olga,
Hello.
a compositor who's been with Studio Meala since pretty early on, is that fair to say?
Yeah, pretty much since the start.
Yeah, I think even before the start, like
Yeah,
like a proto.
agony aunt. Yeah,
Yeah.
before it was confirmed. Yeah.
We can go into that soon. Thanks for joining us, Olga.
Thank you for having me.
Is it our first or second time having a comp artist on? Is it the first time? I'm worried about saying the
Had
first
Evan.
time in case we had Evan.
Well, say it, but then make sure when the next comp artist comes on that you say it again.
Maybe every time. Yeah, okay, I'll start doing that. Even for people that aren't comp artists, I'll just be saying, and you're the first comp artist who's
I think
Who's
before we go any further, we gotta say it. What on earth is a compositor?
That's the the question really everyone asks.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, basically every time I'm like, they're like, well, oh, so what you work in? I'm like, oh, compositor, and it's like no one has a clue what that is,
Yeah.
So pretty much people get confused. They're like, oh, like do you make music or
Yeah.
It's like, nope. Basically compositing is one of the last steps in the production. So what we do is we take all the assets, so the backgrounds and the animation, and we combine them. So we kind of, we have the finished product nearly
Yeah.
of what it's going to look like. So loads of organizing, and then we do a bit of, fixing a little bit as well. If there's anything that's, needs correcting, we are the last ones to do it. And then we do a bit of enhancing. So we add shadows and, the lighting, all that, and camera moves. A lot of things.
Yeah, like I guess would it be fair to say just any final bells and whistles are usually added at compositing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for example in live action, they'd be the ones that, the green screen, they'd have to be the ones editing the green screen to be like, I don't know, the North Pole or something.
Yeah.
And then you have to make it look like the person in front of it actually looks like they're there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, I have trouble. I do feel sorry for you that you have to explain it all the time to people constantly because, like, I've talked to plenty of people where it only comes up in conversation every now and then where, I'll mention, oh, there's a comp artist who's in next week doing that, and then I'll get the question, what's that? And I always panic and I don't know what to say. It's kind of, it's like if you kind of put stuff together and like whenever I say put stuff together, people just go like, are you not doing that and all the other things? I'm like, well, yeah, but it's like so.
I know it's really complicated. It's complicated, but it's hard because whenever like even family members, they're like, so what's your job? Like,
it's hard enough telling them that you work in cartoons, but like,
yeah, it's already hard enough. Like even in animation, it's really funny because you see, I'm half Irish, half Spanish, so half my family's in Spain, right? Mm-hmm. And when you say animation, they don't even know what that is because the word for animation in Spanish is the same word for cheerleading.
Excuse me, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you say, I'm an animator, they think either you're cheerleading or you're like at children's birthday parties. Yeah. So then you have to explain that, and then you have to be like, okay, so it's not that it's making cartoons, but then on top of that, it's compositing, which is really hard to explain.
I'm very curious about the etymology. How
did that happen?
I suppose cheerleaders are animated. They are.
Yeah.
They are. Motion. Like, look over here. I'm like, when people say that. Look at that person. They're so animated.
Yeah, it's like that pretty much. It's the word for like cheering.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Because I guess like reanimate
life
would mean bringing someone back to life as well. So it just means doing something like with like a lively.
Oh, this is excellent.
Yeah.
Finally, people are going to have to be forced to admit that they learned something listening to the Studio Meala podcast.
So
yeah, they learned something.
Your family on your Spanish side all think you're a cheerleader, and then your family on your Irish side think that you draw on cartoons, but then find out you don't actually draw, and then they get really confused.
Pretty much.
Okay, wow.
Compositing is one of those areas which is obviously so vital, and is just another great example of a field of animation that a lot of people say when they're starting out or like interested in getting into animation won't think of first, because like I know most people just think either you draw well or not, and like that's the decider, and it's like, oh, if I want to get into cartoons I just need to be able to draw Tom and Jerry 10,000 times, when of course you can contribute to animation in so many more ways. And I wish there was more exposure of the different alleyways of opportunity that there are for people to get involved.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I agree, because I never even heard of compositing either. Like, even when I went into animation, like I was in college, and even then, like I think it took about 2 years or so until I heard about it. So yeah, like you don't have to be drawing either to be in animation. So yeah, if anyone out there is listening and wants to do animation, but they can't, you know, they don't want to draw or they can't. Yeah, there's definitely loads of
it's
different jobs.
It really always comes across as a really satisfying part of the pipeline to me, you know. If there's someone who wanted to get into animation who's just really interested in the finished product and how films look, and you know, just the last thing that goes on screen, like there is definitely a great satisfaction to that, being the person to put the final touches and make the film into the film, really, because it's often like, you know, a whole team on a production. If the production's going on for a very long time and they've been working on it for weeks and months and they're starting to, like, you know, get a bit tired of the project, it's always when the first comped shot comes in that everyone's reminded, oh my god, I forgot we're making a thing. Like, it's going to look cool. So there's always, like, I hate to be too Disney about it, but there is always a nice kind of magic to seeing the first few composites of shots.
Yeah, definitely.
So
like everyone gets really excited whenever I put one up. So
for sure. And like it's weird because it is kind of, I guess, the most invisible, like to the audience is probably the most invisible step. So it would be nice if there was a way to kind of show it off as its own thing a bit more.
I imagine that similar to editing, it's one of those fields where the better a job you do, the less chance there is of people noticing it. Like if you did a terrible job, then it would probably stand out. But I always feel sorry for people working in those fields that, you know, like really excellent sound design will often just not be noticed, or, you know, like I say, good editing and composition. Do you find yourself noticing particularly good or bad composite work in animation now that you work in it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do, because you know, once you've worked on so many scenes, you start getting an eye for it.
Yeah.
It's like how, you know, sometimes you're, oh my gosh, there's like an eyebrow missing in like one frame. That kind of thing. You notice it a lot, you know? Like the other day, actually, I was watching a show and I was like, oh my God, did the like ink and paint, you know, the color's missing like for one split second, but you notice it, you know?
Yeah.
So
there's a housemate of mine who I used to live with, who I always noticed, and this before I like had that much like broad awareness of animation. If I was going to see a film with him, I'd hear him mutter, "That's badly comped." That's badly comped every now and then. That's badly comped. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? But after a while, I started to notice it, and it is kind of hellish when like films are ruined for you, and you go, oh god. Like I used to never notice bad green screen. I used to like I go back and see things that totally flew past me before and going, Jesus Christ, that looks terrible.
Yeah.
How did I never notice
I know, it's
that?
like we have the eye now. Yeah. Like you can tell a lot, even like, for example, as well, like if something is low quality, like, it's like, oh, that was drawn really tiny.
Oh, yeah.
And blown up. You can tell, you're like, even, I mean, maybe when I was younger, I would have not noticed, but
Yeah, like I don't know,
fixed.
like I feel like there was a period when, at least when I was 12 or 13, where I could watch like a 240p video and not notice the drop in quality. So I wonder if I've just been cursed by like, I don't know, unlocking, like knowing what a resolution is now. I'm like, oh, now I know why that looks bad.
Yeah.
I imagine it's a field that is getting more complicated instead of easier, like even with digital, because now that you've got special effects, you've got just so many moving parts all the time.
I mean, when you think back on the Disney cameras,
those gigantic rigs,
the huge ones, I mean, they had a few people working on it.
It's an interesting thing with like how complicated it can be for comp artists these days, because in so many different areas, like a few lines are starting to get blurred in different departments in different parts of the world or in different productions, and different things can be squeezed in different ways. If it's a studio wanting to save money in one way, or storyboards becoming animation, or there's lots of conversations around that lately. But it can happen where compositing artists can be expected to do basically effects animation. Like I've definitely met a few comp artists who are very hardline. Like if anything seems even close to animating, I don't want to draw a single picture, or I'm throwing this file back in your face. And you do encounter people who do want to kind of add a few bells and whistles, a few extra ways, like, because I guess technically masking something frame by frame is animating as well. So the lines can get blurred depending on the person or depending on the studio a little bit. But
you're right. Sometimes you have to do quite a bit of everything, like even fixing backgrounds and fixing the character, like if the animation has to be changed a little bit. Sometimes you can do it in comp, so it's quite you can end up doing quite a
There's
few
no
things
department that gets the question, can you do this more, than like any other department. So you'll get people either in production or in animation or whatever going, is this a comp? Could comp do that maybe? Like, no one gets that question more. It could be a background where it's like, oh, we want to change the color of every single chair for some reason. It's a client note that comes in. And you go like, should we get the background artist to go back and repaint that? Or it's like sliding into the compositor's office being like, can you do a thing?
They're like, please, sir. I know. Yes, I can have some comp. I know. It's because sometimes even the background artist could be finished, and then
that's the other thing about, I guess that's the other curse of being a compositor in like a smaller studio, because if it's a studio where everyone there is full-time all the time, the artist might be around to come in and fix something. But on something like some of the smaller projects we do, where we only have the team for the time that the project is active, it could be a case where something comes in that needs to be changed in the background, and there's no background artist anymore, so we have to figure out a clever way to do it. And that could be either one of the artists that's available, like, or even the director or yourself.
Like it's easy if you're at the start of the chain. It's easier to go, it's like, okay, well, I mean, that'll be fixed later. So if a composition is at the end, chances are a lot of that's going to have piled up, and it's like, oh, maybe some of this should have been looked at a little sooner.
I'm trying to think, for anyone listening, what projects that you've worked on can be checked out right now. We'll censor out anything that's NDA'd. But I mean, your first thing was Agony Ant. I guess technically that wasn't a Studio Meala project in the same way everything else was because that was kind of made before the studio was properly established. That's obviously where we first worked together, which was great.
Yeah. That's where we met.
Then I'm not sure what the first thing after that was, though.
we had a quick look at the logo. I remember that.
Oh, you
Then
did?
it was
Actually, that's a good point. So anytime you
Yeah.
see the logo animation for Studio Meala, you did the compositing in that, like the little glitchy effects and all that
Yeah.
stuff. That was you. Wow, yeah. And when you like before you joined us on Agony Ant, had you been working in compositing before that?
Well, in college I did my everything in comp basically because you know, like that's how it happened for me. It was like I was animating and everything. I was doing backgrounds, designing, but then I kind of fell into comp because
Someone's got
we
to do
needed it, right? Someone's got to do it. So I was like, oh, I have the After Effects, so I'll do it. So did it, and then I did it for 2 more projects, and then we did another one. Then I ended up doing my grad film in it.
So it just became like, okay, I guess I have to do this every time.
Yeah. So and then I really enjoyed it, so I decided to focus on it, and that's when we did Agony Ant.
So, like, just to give people context, Agony Ant was through a kind of program that Stephen Fagan set up, which is called Animation Studio Lab. And it was kind of a course where a director would come on, that was me, and the whole team would be made up of recent graduate students who just want to work on a film. But it was a funny project to work on because I had such specific directions for the look of it. I think like a lot of that stuff ended up being stuff you still do by default in Studio Meala, obviously because it's just my style for how I want things to look. I guess one of those, simple things like I always like having like drop shadow, under the line work. I think whenever like I gave like any directions or whenever we worked together on stuff, it was usually to make stuff look a bit dirtier than it did.
Yeah,
already.
You're right. Yeah.
Just make it look less good. Just
dip the whole thing in tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't look too computery.
So is there any aspect of compositing that can be the most like frustrating thing more than anything else in the job? Like one I can always think of is just export times. That seems to be the common one.
Yeah, the export times can take quite a while, especially if you're under pressure because you have a deadline. Because that's the thing with compositing. The deadline is harder to move for us. Everyone else can maybe get more time.
Yeah.
For us, it's like, oh, this is the deadline. So if you're like trying to deliver stuff and then your rendering is like not cooperating.
Yeah.
Can be quite stressful. You're like, oh my God, The other thing would be you have to have everything very well organized at the start before you start.
Yeah.
Everything has to be labeled and all that properly because it's fine if you only have a few shots, but if you have like hundreds of shots, if they're not labeled properly, you start getting lost really. You're like, oh my gosh, where is this? So you, as a comper, you have to also be organized, but then of course the people before you as well, which it's been great. Everyone has been.
It's okay. You can tell. You can tell people they've not named their files correctly. It's a safe space.
No, they have. It's a thing that could happen, and so
you can't
it's
name it all one .png. Not every single file.
Right? It's like this one.
Or do you see a lot of project 1, project 11, project 10, project 001? Do you see a lot of that coming in?
Thankfully in Studio Meala, no. Thankfully.
Thank God.
No, we don't get that.
But like I think because it was a learning thing for us as well. I mean, you've been with us since we were like a tiny studio with just a few of us. So like the thing about waiting for exports and deadlines is a thing that gets better as we get a bit more robust as a studio because we can actually plan for the time a bit better. But like definitely at the start when we were getting projects with like 2-week turnarounds and I'm making some ridiculous assumptions between like, Olga can just export all that. Like she'll finish the compositing at 3 and then export the entire film in an hour. I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
True. So we learned a lot.
We had to actually adjust to that. But like we definitely had days as well where we were not organizing our stuff properly, and like that was only a detriment to Olga. Like it's our comp team that would suffer because of that. So obviously we had to.
It's something that students will not like to hear. No one will get enthusiastic about it, but it does seem like something that in colleges or whatever, like in animation schools, like an important thing that should be, well, at least strongly encouraged, if not properly taught. Organizing your files, like it's easy to say, like, don't forget to name it this, but like if you are learning to be a part of a team, a production line, that's definitely, because you know, you're either going to learn it there or you're going to learn it when someone smacks you at the back of the head and says, why the hell did you send me 30 files named AskKG LK11111?
Oh god. yeah. Oh, I'm picturing that.
It'll because it's a lesson that will be learned at some point, so they might as well learn it at the start, I think.
I need to dig up my old college folders where I did do that. I need the save as window to go away, so I'm just going to mash my keyboard and press enter.
And now look at you running a studio.
And I'm still doing it. I'm not still doing it.
That's how they got the studio name. Meala was just into the keyboard.
Key smash.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
I should rename the studio to Meala_final_final.
Oh yeah. Final.
This one.
I do find myself typing things like, if I've exported the same thing, like if I'm on my 5th one and there's some problem, I'd name it like please work, like please work 2, please God work 3. My prayers go into the file names.
Like in comp, we have to, sometimes we have so many versions, but you have to be consistent. You know, you have to be like version 1, version 2, version 1 A B C D. You know, because the client could suddenly be like, "Ooh, I really like 1D," and then you know you have to find it. So you know,
what's the
better be labeled.
I'm trying to think. What's the highest version number you've ever seen on a shot?
I think maybe 12.
Okay, that's bad, but it's not as bad as I thought it might be. I'm preparing myself for like 20 something, but that's good. Okay.
No.
Just think,
we haven't reached the 20s.
When they uploaded that Mummy trailer without the right audio, they uploaded version 11 instead of 12, and I mean, come on, they couldn't have labeled that more clearly.
It should have been. Yeah. Should have been 12. This one. Okay.
Oh yeah, like, you uploaded Mummy trailer final. You should have uploaded Mummy trailer final 2.
Exactly.
I was hoping to get from you, Olga, because we've got a lot of people who are getting into compositing, have no idea what they're doing. A few just not even pro tips, just basic things that might save them, or even things that you wish you knew.
Yeah. So I'd say stuff like, I know it's a bit of a pain, but learn your shortcuts because they'll save you a lot of time. Like when I started off in comp, I was doing everything the long way, where you could just use the shortcut.
Yeah.
So you know, if you quickly learn those, it really saves a lot of time. It's worth it. I promise, because you know the other way is horrible. And then make sure, like on the left side, when you can bring things into the After Effects or whichever program you're using. Just if you keep it neat, it really saves you time, even though you have to set it up the first time, but then you can always copy it, the template or whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because if you drop everything on the same one, it's going to be harder to look through it. If you have, like, let's say backgrounds, characters or something, it'll make everything much neater, especially if you have tons of files to be looking at. And then I'd say for cameras, this is a thing I learned as well, through trial and error. It's best, let's say if you have to do a camera move, I'd say don't move the scene itself, like don't move the background. Like make a camera. I know at first it seems really scary making a 3D camera, but it really saves you time later if you have to change anything, because having to keyframe a background to make a camera move becomes horrible later on. Yeah.
That's one that the first time I discovered it was an option, kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
TV Paint doesn't have a 3D camera, but stuff like Toon Boom and After Effects does, and it makes you look at your work so differently, because you start picturing your work the way it should have been pictured, like traditionally, like it's a camera being held over, a piece of paper, and you're just moving that around.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not moving the actual elements. And it might seem a bit scary. Like at first, the first few times you're like, oh my gosh, Because looking back, I was like, my God, I spent hours on, doing it the wrong way. Like if I look back, I don't know, like 5 years.
I wonder, Owen, is it time for Olga to try pulling an oblique strategy card?
I'm picking up the box.
By the way, for anyone listening, or should we... We're all in the same room. Are we trying to give the illusion that we're in the same room? We're in the same room. Here you go, Olga.
Ooh, I take it. Role play.
Sean, I am touching your nose, but I don't need to. I don't. Why would I say? Why would I say?
Because you're touching it. I said "ow" for some reason. Like,
ow. Oh well, I do have a thumbtack at the end of my finger, as you can see. God. As you can see, I'm holding that up for you to see.
I see that now. Thank you very much.
So, Olga,
what color is it?
If you would care to take one of these cards from the deck of cards that I am holding up in front of your face right now.
Okay, I take one.
I'm holding that card up in front of the both of you now, so you can see that. What do you think about those words?
What does that say?
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know.
You guys don't have your glasses on. I'll just read it out. It says, accept advice.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, that's Brian, that's just like, you didn't think about that one too hard.
True.
The next card says, drink water. Oh.
That's also true. Stay hydrated. Yeah, I think it's about accepting advice. I think that's a huge part of comp. You're trying to get the final product the way that the director wants and the client, and also, have all the work look the best possible so that everyone's work that they put into it, shows through. So you definitely have to take all your feedback and not be upset or anything about it. I think that's a very important part. Like if anyone wants to be a comper, you're going to go through many, many versions. And what matters is the last version, really, the one that gets accepted. So, it's very important to be able to take feedback in comp.
Is there any, I guess it depends on the project, but you mentioned compositing kind of ultimately being about what the director's looking for, what the client's looking for. Mm-hmm. Do you find that in comp there's still a level of being able to kind of add your own twist or add your own kind of amount of expression to a shot, or does that depend on the project itself? Is some stuff very rigid and some stuff is a bit more...
So for Studio Meala, it has been, I've been able to be quite creative, so I can add my own input as well. So that's been really good. I'd say even in the rigid ones, you could still add your own touch. Some directors are open for that as well. They'll appreciate you going the extra mile and trying things out.
Yeah, that's good.
So
as long as they're not giving you notes do something here, just do something.
Yeah, where they're not very specific.
Make this more gutter.
I was hoping for a gutter product.
Where's the good? Yeah, it's the good button.
Yeah, that's the good one.
I'm not seeing the good I asked for.
Yeah. I'd say in comp, it's still very creative. The way I see it, I find it very fulfilling. Really, it's super creative. I see it that you're also kind of designing. Really, you have to approach it. Well, I approach it from an artist point of view. So, yeah, and that's, it makes it much more fun. Like you feel like you're contributing your own piece to it.
Well, it's probably a huge benefit because you mentioned that on your college films you kind of had a hand on every kind of aspect of it, and it's kind of good that you know where everything's coming from. Like there's not really any department that you don't get or you don't know how it's done.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's actually quite unique with comp in that you probably see an aspect of every other department or communicate with everything on some level. Even at an animatic stage or storyboard stage, you might look at storyboards so you can kind of foresee something that might be troublesome in comp, or even something where you can, before an animator starts, say, you know what, we can save the animator a bit of work because we could do this thing in comp. So even as far as storyboards, it seems like you're probably learning and getting advice from every stage of production more than maybe any other department does.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we see a lot, all the stages.
Yeah.
We get to see all the work and then put it together. So, you learn a lot really in comp, even, as you said, from the other departments. Which is cool, because then you could always apply it and do your own film or something.
Is there any other aspect of like an animation pipeline, not even necessarily just what we do at Studio Meala, but in any kind of animation? Is there any other aspect of animation that you have interest in, or you think, I'd love to try that, or spend more time on that?
Well, I love design. Design is like, because when I directed, I did the character design and development, like visual development. Yeah, and I really love comp as well. So I think those are my favorites.
Okay, that's funny because it's like basically the very first thing and the very last thing. Everything in between.
Exactly.
Yeah, although everyone else can handle that. That's nice. It would be interesting to it would be an interesting thing for you to try and find a project where you can do some character design at the start. Go off for a while.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Work on something else, then come back and composite your own designs.
You're like, oh, it's my character.
You're alive.
Yeah, that would be so fun.
It's one aspect of an animation pipeline that in terms of doing it, I'm pretty hopeless at it, and it's something I should work on because I do know a lot of good directors who've had some amount of experience in compositing, and I see what you mean. Like you're getting a lot of directing experience yourself as well by doing compositing because you've got an eye on everything, you've got a bit of a hand in everything. You learn how to communicate with everyone.
Yeah, and dealing with the client.
It's the broad strokes, but it's also the fine details. It's kind of everything. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Everyone get into compositing.
Everybody comp. Everybody quit all your other department jobs. Let's only composite things. Oh, there's nothing we can composite.
Super fun.
Where all the drawings go.
Do we want to do wrap-ups? And Sean, do you want to say a Meala news corner?
I realised when I suggested that to you immediately afterwards that I've got no news, and it's more of a future tense. If there's ever news,
if there's ever news, there'll be a Meala news corner.
Yeah,
news beat.
Yeah, I think for now we'll do a regular wrap up.
So for now we'll just do one of our regular really good wrap ups. Olga, thank you very much for coming here in person to this table where we're all sitting around today to teach us dummies about composition, compositing.
You said that wrong. We didn't learn anything.
Well, I've not learned anything. Will you come back and teach us more?
Oh, I might. I love talking about it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And look forward to, for the audience, look forward to more compositing from Olga and her mini that she'll eventually make.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
I guess, do we just say bye now? Is it bye?
Sean, do you want to do some machine gun noises? And
yeah. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Check out Studio Meala.
No.
Check us out on the socials.
I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Studio Meala,
TikTok.